All right, y'all, we're back at it on the 2001 Chevy Adventure. I first took it apart because I'm facing some sort of a noise. It's a clicking when applying brakes. I first thought it was actually inside the extension housing there, which the CV axle goes into. It's basically the differential for the transmission. And I don't know why I didn't figure out sooner, but I was out here with the stethoscope trying to find stuff out, and lo and behold, I looked at this caliper up here, and as you can see, it's got some pretty good scrape marks on it. So I was like, I don't remember hearing a big scraping happening. And then I put two and two together, and I'm like, well, I'll be basically here, this little ridge here where the rim is a little bit wider. It was tapping, and it was 1, 2, 3. So it's 1, 2, 3, and that's what it would sound like. It would go click, 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 click on braking because the caliper was so worn out. Well, the caliper itself, it was wearing the pads unevenly, and the rear, the inner pad, the inboard pad, got so bad. And what I also think is going on is these wheels are aftermarket, so they're a little bit, you know, they fit, but they're not perfect. And so that caliper was so far out from its perch, it was rubbing. So glad it wasn't a transmission noise. So I figured that out. I've got new calipers, pads, and rotors ready to go back together. But I'm gonna hold off on doing that because what I'm gonna do first is get in here and replace our oil pan gasket, which, and if you can see in that bolt there, that's fresh oil. So the gasket around the oil pan is leaking, and also I have a timing cover seal leak. So, and then the oil has saturated this mount, which I did put on there a couple years ago, but I'm gonna go ahead and replace that again. So the next thing I'm gonna do is basically get set up to get underneath here, drain the oil, of course. I wish I would have taken it to a pressure washer first, but that's neither here nor there. And the good news is the oil leak isn't terrible, but it is bad enough to where it's been leaking. As you can see, this thing's been sitting in here for a couple days. It's not that bad of a leak. It's making a mess of everything. It's washing back on the transmission pan. And to do these, which I haven't done one in a while, I did a handful of them at the shop I worked at. I think I do have to remove the starter just to get that out of the way. So I need to disconnect the battery, remove my starter, obviously loosen all the bolts. I've got a harness that's going underneath the kind of the engine I'll have to kind of deal with. I've got this sensor, which I should just be able to unplug. And then, let me make sure I'm not getting into oil. And then up here, same thing. I know there's one bolt that's pretty tight to get to. That guy right there. But all you need is a little 1/4 inch setup and you'll be fine. And of course the fun part is cleaning everything up, which if I was smart, I would put the brakes back on and take this thing to a car wash and really clean it. And I might even do that, you guys. I don't really need to do that. It's really not necessary. That'd be a lot of extra work, but there's a whole lot of grease and oil on that other side. But anyway, so the major fix is going to be the brakes. Oops. While I'm in here, I'm going to do the oil pan. Also, I've got the coolant's getting low again, and I'm getting a pretty nasty buildup. And I don't know if it's old bars leak or if I'm getting combustion gases in the into the coolant system. Ugh, I gotta get all that crap out of there. I don't know, guys. I think it's coolant related. Might even be minerals from not distilled water. So what I'm gonna do is, I know I have a leak. This hose right here that I had to put on, which I wasn't too happy with how it looked. It does go all the way over the top of the hose. The clamp does, like the tip of the hose is about here. But this has been a few months since I've done this, so this is probably loose. Long story short, what I need to do is, look back there. I gotta get my other flashlight and take a better look. Basically pressure test it, figure out if we've got an external leak or not. My hope is if I can get a couple more years out of this thing, if not more, I'll be happy. So it's been damn good to me. This is my daily driver. So over here we got our parts. Got brand new rotors, brand new pads, calipers with brackets. These do have a core on them, so I got to return the old ones. I got my old pan gasket. Oh, and also I'm going to replace these sway bar end links, which, let me find my flashlight here. This side is actually broken. I've been hearing it. So you can see right there. Oops. Broken. So I'm going to replace those and the bushings. Kind of get a fresh feel. And down the road it does need struts and lower control arms just to kind of tighten up. Well, the struts are worn out, but this is not a big deal. They got some life left, so. Hey guys, I'm gonna get to work. If I really needed this thing to get back on the road, I just put the calipers on, brakes and pads, bleed the brakes, and hit the road. My dad's letting me borrow his Yukon, which you guys have seen on the channel before. So I'll probably take advantage and probably should just knock out that oil pan. Again, it's not really on the priority list, so I'm gonna have to think about that. Again, it's not losing too much oil too fast. I really don't have to add oil that much, so it's really just kind of a mess looking like. So who knows? If I do the oil pan, I still need to get the front crank seal and that front mount, and then I will have pretty much all the parts that I need. A couple other big things this thing does actually need is my anti-lock brake system does not work. I think I've got a bad wheel speed sensor. Fuel gauge still doesn't work until it gets full or empty. Basically in the middle it doesn't read, so it'll read full, and then when it's empty it'll go, it's empty. And unfortunately that sensor is integral with the pump, which is the whole module that goes in the tank, so that's really not a big deal. And as you can see, the rest of our stuff there. So it's really not too bad. Again, if I needed to get it back on the road, it just needs brakes. And as you can see, guys, man, I had this thing. I drive the crap out of this thing going to we do pet sitting and dog walking. And these brakes have been on here for a year. So pretty bad. Maybe 2 years. I can't remember. I could have sworn I did them last year, but maybe it was 2 years ago. So anyways, guys, I'm going to dive in the next scene you'll either see the oil pan off or the brakes put back together. Depends on what I want to do here. I might watch a couple of videos just to get brushed up on the oil pan, but it is so straightforward. It's just a little bit awkward getting it out and getting it around that harness, making sure everything's clean, and then of course going back together with it. So all right guys, let's get to work. All right y'all, second video. I opted against the oil pan gasket for now. I'm going to do that later this season. It's not leaking terribly bad, and plus I just changed the oil. So about halfway through the oil's life. So I'm going to change that when I do next oil change, and I'm also going to clean everything up before I do. So what I'm doing now is I pulled the codes for the ABS issue I'm having. I figured what I'd do is I'd fix the brakes, do the sway bar bushings and end links, and then hopefully fix this ABS issue, because I do want my analog brakes to work again for winter. And I did find a break in the wire that I've already repaired, and the code is basically mimicking a bad sensor, or basically no signal. And what I've done here is I've hooked up directly to the sensor at the bearing, and this produces AC voltage. And so what I'm looking for, I'm just basically double checking that the sensor and harness side is good, or not harness, but the pigtail side So I've got it hooked up here, and I'm just going to turn the wheel, and you can see I've got a spike in voltage. I'm on alternating current, and so my bearings slash my reluctor wheel slash sensor is definitely good to go. Now I could have another break in the wire further up, but this one has a nice rubber coating around it, and again there might be an issue in the connector. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to tape that up. Basically, I don't know if I could test it in the air here. I don't know if it needs to be on the ground or not. But I think once it reads over 5 miles an hour, the ABS light should go out. So I'm hoping that's a fix. It's an easy one, and it makes sense because, you know, as it curls up into the connector, and it basically just, you know, moves, and so check for that. And there's a cool way to check your output of the sensor itself, just to verify that it does work. There you go. All right, guys. I still need to go to the parts store to get the bushings, and looks like I don't need any parts for the ABS fix. I was gonna maybe get a whole new connector, but I think we're good to go. We're just gonna try it out. Then I'm gonna come back and throw the brakes back together and get this thing back on the road until the next, well, it's not gonna be officially back on the road. The next thing I need to do is figure out our coolant leak, and then maybe do a nice coolant flush and verify that I don't have any combustion gases getting into the system. Who knows? So we're gonna get her done, and glad the ABS, hopefully this is the fix, and let's get her done. All right, y'all, we are all taped up, ready to plug back in. Oops. And ready for that test drive, so we shall see. Let's call the parts store and get the bushings ordered up. I'm gonna do the sway bar bushings and end links first, then I'll knock out the brakes. Let's get her done. All right, y'all, we are continuing it on. We have calipers removed and the new rotors installed. I wire wheeled the face of the wheel bearing just to make sure everything's nicely mated. Basically cleaned up the rotor, got all the packaging oil off of it. As you can see, we've got our brake line. I did inspect the rubber. It seemed okay, but don't hesitate to replace your brake lines. I've got my little clamps and also a little catch pan. So this is ready. We're basically ready to install the calipers. Same thing on this side. Got the old calipers in the box ready to return to the parts store. And tomorrow I'm going to install the calipers. I still have that disconnected because I took it off before we started. Initially I thought there was an issue back there in the transaxle. I figured out our caliper rubbing issue. So the lower ball joint also reinstalled, because again I had I was about to pull the axle and figure out. I initially thought my noise was coming from there, but what was happening was the caliper was so far extended because of the inner pad at a wear spot there, and there. Nothing on this side. This wheel is not factory. There's a combination of worn out brakes and a little bit too small of a wheel. I am going to grind some of this away and then repaint. I don't really need to paint it, but I'm trying to stave off some rust. This is like a universal wheel that these tires are installed on, but at least I believe so. So we're done for the night. I got my station set up. New calipers, I'm gonna put the frames on first, build the pads around the rotors. I got my brake lube or whatever, anti-seize, brake fluid, brake clean. And I got my little parts bin going. Here we are. After we get all this done, we're gonna address the coolant, figure out what's going there, and then we will move on to probably just driving it, or we need to get the fuel filter. Driving it, and then the next thing we'll do is the oil pan, front timing seal, front engine mount. Because as you can see, it's making a mess, it's getting everywhere. Good news, I don't really have to add oil between oil changes, so it's really not that bad. And as you can see, the condition of these struts, sorry I hit record, they still work okay, but if I got new struts and new lower control arms, it's not that bad, but things are getting worn out. If I got those, this thing will feel brand new up front at least. Which you can see there, lower A-arms, control arms, struts. And my goal is to keep this thing running as long as possible. It's a wonderful van. It's speedy as all get out. And we're getting her done. Last Frontier Garage. My wife made me this, or ordered this for me. Isn't that freaking awesome? I'm doing this with the light. I would joke around, that's part of the mechanic. Alright y'all, get this right side caliper on. New line, or the line hooked up and everything. Doing the other side, what I like to do, what I've always done is put the lube, of course, where the pad is going to be kind of wiggling around a little bit. And I also like to put some around here and where this part pushes against the pad. Just a little buffer, kind of it's probably not doing much, but it helps to avoid clickety clacks, kind of, again, if you have cheap brake parts, they might make more noise, but it's just worked. And a friend of mine had like a spray he would put on, or a coworker, spray, and I don't know, I just think it helps insulate, helps kind of just lubricate it, what have you. Who knows, it may not do anything, but that's what I like to do. So of course I got the other side that I'm about to put on. I've got my sway bar end links and new bushings that I finally got to chase down, and I also got a fuel filter that I will put on this bad boy. I haven't changed that in a while, so let's get her done, get the brakes wrapped up. One thing I want to do, or that I like to do, is I've already got my brake fluid topped off here, and on this particular model, the minivan, just remove the wiper arm from its pivot, and then I'm using a transmission funnel. Got it filled up, and then once I get this side hooked up and get the clamps off, I'm gonna basically open up the bleeder screws and just let it sort of gravity bleed, because the new calipers are most likely, nearly empty, if not totally empty. And it'll allow for less brake bleeding, depending on, if you have somebody pumping the brakes, it helps tremendously, because all the fluid is basically already there, and then you're just basically pressing the pads against the rotor and you're good to go. But if you leave it like that and start pumping, you're gonna have a ton of air. It's gonna take forever to bleed. So if you have the time, kind of let the fluid gravity, but you got to be extremely careful and make sure you don't forget about it and it drains all the way down. As long as somebody doesn't press the pedal, you should be good, but you just want to keep the reservoir above empty, so you're not suddenly having to bleed the master cylinder for some reason, which again, unless somebody pressed the brakes and it sucked in air, you wouldn't really have to, but and there's ways to bleed it on the vehicle, but just stuff to avoid. So anyways guys, we're gonna get to work. Kind of moving pretty slow. It's been a busy day. It's about, I think, almost 9 o'clock. Gotta head inside and do some office work. So I'm just kind of doing one step at a time, get everything done, get her down on the road, or back on the road tomorrow. And of course I may or may not test drive it tonight, depending on how far I get. But everything else is pretty straightforward, and let's get her done. All right guys, driver's side's good to go. This side is filled up, so next thing I'm gonna do is have my wife come in, help me bleed the brakes. I like to have one of those cool tools where you can just do it yourself. I do have a vacuum bleeder like the old style, but the best ones are the ones that actually push the air up through the system rather than try to pull the air down. Anyway, so I get these bled, and then I'm fixing to get my suspension parts. This side all together, looking good, and just got to bleed the brakes and get these sway bar parts on and popping. Let's do it. All right, y'all, we got the new sway bar bushings in. It was a little bit of a chore on this side because I don't have the tie rod off. I'm not sure if I recorded. I was originally thinking that my noise was in the transmission, so I was getting ready to pull the CV shaft out. Didn't have to, so I just left the other side off while I did the work. Got the new end link on. There's a special way to tighten the end links. The vehicle does have to be on the ground with the wheels on. And then, according to this brand, this is a Moog, basically with the vehicle at suspension at curb height, which means on the ground, sitting how it normally would. Tighten the barrel nut until the bolt threads are flush with the end of the hex nut. So I'm going to tighten it until the bolt head kind of lines up. And then, and the center hex spacer cannot be rotated with 2 fingers. So this little guy here. So basically tighten it to where that can't move. And then you're going to go 2 more complete turns. So this will provide approximately 2 to 3 threads exposed above the nut. So, and this one's showing the nuts going down, but maybe it's just an upside down picture. I'm gonna leave it like this. In fact, it might be it might be best to go the other way, I'm thinking, because if everything loosened up, the bolt would just drop out. So I might flip these over, actually. Looking at the picture here, it's hard to tell, but obviously it looks like it's, you know, from the bottom. So I might flip those over. There really wasn't the old ones came out the way I put them in, and as you can tell, this one is about to go just a spot where everything was kind of working against it. The driver's side was broken, and then my actual bushings are absolutely toast. And there was so much buildup on the metal clamps, I actually had to air hammer basically the inside, like if this was the clamp, from here all the way to here, basically where this was touching is just full of like rust on rust on rust, and it came off pretty well, but I actually made it to where I couldn't get the clamp on the new dealy bobber. So I should notice a drastic improvement in ride quality. Of course, the driver's side wasn't even hooked up, so it was, you know, who knows. We'll see how it is. And again, it doesn't really matter. I might flip these over. Although the nut is oblong, so I'm not going to worry about it. As you can see, it's kind of, you can kind of tell. The style of nut that basically, the top collar of it is oval, so it can't just spin off. So anyway, we'll be fine. All right, guys. I'm gonna get this outer tie rod back installed. I gotta find a cotter pin, a new cotter pin for it. And then, I don't know if I'll have my wife come out tonight to bleed the brakes or not. We shall see. If I don't, I will just pick up with that tomorrow. I'll probably knock out the fuel filter really quick tonight. And first thing tomorrow, I'll get her out here to help me bleed the brakes, the wheels on the ground, tighten up our end link to the proper what have you. A lot of times those things get over tightened and they're basically everything's compressed all the time, not really offering any cushion. But these new bushings, the main bushings, are gonna be sweet. Definitely gonna notice those. So, and a lot of noises can be like, remember the old Dodge Caravans? You hear a chassis noise, and it was because of bushings. Even if they looked like this on the outside, the metal band was basically tapping the bar. So, get it done. All right, y'all, we're gonna do the fill filter. This one's really easy because it's got the little tabs you can just use by hand. Sometimes I do want to spray something in there, like even brake clean, just to help lubricate stuff. And I'm noticing that the bolt head is broken off of the bracket thing. So let me see if I could loosen it with some of these really quick. Let's see here. That looks pretty rusted. Huh. Alright, I'm gonna get some vice grips, see if I can pull that out, but it's not a big deal. The lines itself hold everything up pretty well, but it does kind of support, sorry guys, it does kind of support the whole thing, and it does technically still kind of sit there, but I probably am going to try to get that off of there. So let me just, yeah, it just goes right into that. So let me get some stuff and see if we can get this. I really would like to throw a bolt in there and get everything clamped down. Let's do it. All right, y'all, that was not budging at all. Then I had the bright idea, why don't I heat it up? Because I had the vice grips on it, and I probably, if I could heat the area, I probably could have got it out. But then, of course, a lot of fuel. So I decided against it. It's pretty solid. It's not going anywhere. It's been like this forever. So it kind of gets hung up on there. Maybe I'll clean this up and put a thing of duct tape over it. I'll probably do that, and get this surface nice and clean. And then one little patch of duct tape will just be that extra, little bit extra for the situation. So. All right, guys, and then we're basically gonna be done. We'll film tomorrow, the finished product, and then once this thing's ready for an oil change, I need to get prepped, and I really need to get this pan gasket fixed, the front timing cover seal, and the front engine mount, which should be on the passenger side, front of the engine, and then after that, boy, this thing's gonna be sitting pretty good. So, all right, y'all, appreciate you watching for tonight. This is going to be another segment here to finish up the video tomorrow. Got the old fill filter installed. All right, y'all, this is definitely overkill, but I did just do a quick little duct tape job. When you're using duct tape, remember that you want to form it to everything, center it, and then move your way outward, and make sure you cover every little gap and really treat it almost like a vacuum seal. And this stuff really actually works really good until it gets too much moisture, which by the end of this winter, this will actually probably all be, who knows. But hold everything together for now. This is probably not necessary, but the better you take care of your stuff, the better it'll take care of you. All right, y'all, I have found a can of black paint. I grinded everything down on each. You can really tell if you look at it, there's a little bit of a hump on each thing here. And so, not that I'm ever gonna let the brakes go this bad again, but ultimately, if the brakes are failing under OEM conditions, the wheel should never be able to touch the, the face of the brake caliper. So these are aftermarket wheels. They wouldn't put some wheels on something where they would be able to do that. And or the casting of these calipers is thicker than it should be. But anyways, ready to go. She's a beaut. We're gonna get the brakes bled, get the wheels mounted back up, set her on the ground, tighten up our end links, take her on a test drive. Last Frontier paint. Alright y'all, we are all bled, the brakes are bled, and our stuff. I'm about to put the wheels on. This is the finished product of basically grinding down the high spot, and I just painted it. I got a super stuffy nose right now. Jeepers stuff. I'm gonna put the wheels on, get it on the ground. I'm going to properly tighten the end links, and then basically top off the brake fluid, and then top off my radiator, and then figure out what's leaking again. I think it's this hose that's getting loose. I didn't like that anyway. It bends right after it straightens out, so I didn't have enough straight there. I should be able to tighten her up. So, and then finish charging it. Probably can just throw that on there now. This battery actually does need to be replaced. It's plenty old, but driving it enough, or it's never given me really an issue. So get this thing going, and yeah, get some stuff crossed off. Let's get her done.